Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. Like to we've got 3 agenda items, so I'd like to bring this this meeting to order. My name's Jeff Roberts, and I'm the chair of the Canmore Planning Commission. And reading into the record, I'd like to go through who's here from the members.
Darlene Paranack.
Garney Baker.
Jeff Hillstead.
Florian Youngen.
Eric Young.
And from staff, could town staff introduce themselves?
Jolene Noel, clerk.
Robin Denage, Manager of Communications.
Michael Fark, General Manager, Infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. We do have an agenda before us today. Is there any additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda as emailed out and presented today? If not, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as before us?
So moved.
Eric, all those in favor? All in favor, carried. We have previous minutes from the last meeting on July 31st before us. Trust everyone's had a chance to go through those, and if there are any additions, deletions, or comments to be made there? If none, could I have a motion to approve? Move.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, first item of the agenda is development permit 2019-109. Okay. Oh.
I'm going to give a presentation on an overview of the application. I just wanted to note that the applicant, Rainey Carrigan, is in the is present as well today. So this development permit application is for Lot 19, Block 91, Plan 1095F, which is on 1438 2nd Avenue. This is in Teepee Town. So it is in the Teepee Town the TPT-CR district, which has quite complex rules, so I'm going to be going through all of those regulations today. This is a street view image of the property. It is the kind of White House adjacent to the Chez Francois restaurant. So there's views both of 15th Street and of 2nd Avenue. This is a site plan that was submitted with the application. It shows the existing development. So there is an existing house and a detached garage on the property, which would need to be removed. So the application before us is for a 4-unit townhouse. Each of the units is same size and the same layout. They are kind of on 3 levels. So each unit has its own direct entrance. It has its own single-car garage. They each have 3 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. The gross floor area of the entire development was 643 meters, and therefore a sustainability screening report was required, and that should be in your package. This is one of the renderings of the development of the 4-unit townhouse. So when reviewing the application, there are a number of small variances which are being requested. I'm not going to run through them here, but I will highlight each of the variances through the presentation. So therefore, because of these variances, it had to be referred to the CPC for decision. So under the site design category, the units are oriented towards 2nd Avenue and the laneway. There are no units proposed to access 15th Street. Because of this design, it needed a split drainage design going from front to rear to accommodate all of the stormwater management that we required to be on site. So therefore, the floor slab elevation needed to be raised for 2 reasons. One, it had to be above the high groundwater, but also the grades were raised to address those overland flows and stormwater management. This is a copy of the stormwater management plan provided by the applicant's consultant, indicating where all of the stormwater management facilities are on the property and to ensure that there is proper drainage towards these facilities. Further on in the land use bylaw analysis, we look at yard setbacks. And the TPT-CR district has quite unique yard setback requirements, different than, for example, a South Canmore fourplex. So the front yard setback is shorter, and it's required to be between 2 and 5 meters, even though a driveway is still required to be 6 meters in length. So the proposal for this development is at 5.98 meters, which is a 0.98 meter variance. It also requires, this district requires a larger rear yard setback, and this is 10 meters. So the standard is usually 7.5 meters, and then a deck is allowed to encroach in that. In this district, the rear yard setback is 10 meters, and decks are not allowed to encroach. Therefore, another variance is required to allow the deck to encroach 2.29 meters into that rear yard setback. The side yard setbacks are similar, they're 1.5 meters. However, there are eaves over the cantilevers, which encroach further than what the land use bylaw allows for a fourplex. So this requires a 0.46 meter side yard setback variance. As well, balconies. The balconies on the side of the building which faces 15th Street require a 0.2 meter side yard setback variance. For site coverage, the district normally allows 45% site coverage, but because of the cantilevers, it increases the site coverage to 48%, which means that there is a 3% variance being requested. So this is the plot plan showing what the development would look like on the site. It is kind of small to see, but you can see how there are cantilevers here on the sides of the building, which requires the eave encroachment as well as the site coverage. And you can see the development with respect to the adjacent dwelling. So there is a requirement in the TPT-CR district as well to have the shorter front yard setback, but to also be respective of the building beside it. So in this case, the fact that this building is further back actually provides a greater conformity with the adjacent building. Oh, and I'm also, while we're here, just going to point out on the plot plan, part of the TPT-CR district says that any building which has two frontages should give equal treatment to both frontages. In this case, the developer has chosen to try to save the trees, which are actually in the road right-of-way. These are deciduous trees, and not have any entrances coming on 15th. However, that does require the developer to potentially remove 2 trees along 2nd Avenue, which we, accordance with our new tree protection bylaw, if those trees are on town lands, they are a town asset, and the developer is required to go through the process with Parks Department in paying for the removal of those assets. So with the building height, massing, and scale, height is typically calculated from existing grade. However, where there are high groundwater requirements or raising due to stormwater management, we take that higher grade. Notwithstanding the higher grade required here, the developer is still requesting a 0.1 meter height variance. In addition to the building, the height, for the massing, this district also requires buildings that have a smaller building, so contextually, where the building next to it is shorter, to have a stepped back appearance from both front and rear elevations, as well as the side elevations. And in this case, there is a variance being requested for the front and rear elevations. So you can see highlighted in the blue circle, that is the 0.1 meter height variance being requested. But you can see that the building meets the stepped back requirements from the side elevations. And this is the front and rear elevations showing the one corner which is going beyond the 45-degree step back where it's adjacent to a house which is shorter than it. So for the building design, there are 4 separate entrances at grade. The doors do face the street, and even the doors that face both 2nd and 15th, they've been angled to address both street frontages. We do deem that the developer has proposed equal treatment on both frontages. Even though there isn't an access onto 15th Street, the design of the building, there's been extensive enhancements to the exterior to give it that treatment. And the developer has proposed the balconies, which do require a side yard variance, but to enhance the appearance of the building. However, the developer has requested a variance for mirror imaging because both sides of the units are mirrored. And so this drawing shows, or rendering, shows both the front of the building and the side of the building facing 15th Street. So even though there is no access, there is given kind of equal architectural treatment to the building. The roof has both a mix of reverse and gable pitch, although the TPTCR district requires all portions of a roof and dormers to be 612. The proposal is for the roof, the entire roof structure, to be 412, which again requires a variance. So here's another rendering showing the mixture of roof pitches, roof angles, both the reverse pitch and the gable pitch, but it is lower angle at 412. For materials and colors of the building, there aren't any specific requirements in the TPT-CR district. However, our analysis is that there is a mix of materials and colors that are appropriate for the mountain environment. So for example, timber, stone, stucco, and just to go back to the rendering, the colors are acceptable in our palette of colors. In this district, we also require applicants to preserve existing mature trees. So the applicant has chosen to preserve the 3 deciduous trees along 15th. However, the 2 coniferous trees on 2nd Avenue, as I mentioned before, are most likely in the way of the driveway and our town assets. So we would, as a condition, require the applicant to work with the Parks Department in removal of those assets. For parking, there's only 6 parking stalls required. The applicant has provided 8. And for the SSR, it shows that there is a positive impact. And the majority of these impacts come from the site location in proximity to services, as well as the green building enhancements. And there is a commitment from the applicant for Built Green Silver, and I believe they have already registered with Built Green Canada as a recognized builder. They'd be required to pay off-site levies for the 3 additional units at the current rates, and that would be upon signing of the development agreement. So currently the rates are as indicated here. So there would be about $60,000 of off-site levies required. The application was circulated to the TP Town Task Force. We only received 3 comments back from the entire committee. One committee member stated opposition for developments that have mirrored units, and the other 2 were in support of the application and even okay with the mirrored units. So I'd like to present 3 options that are available to the CPC. You can approve the application subject to the conditions outlined in the Schedule A that I have attached. You can refuse the application, specifying the reasons for refusal, or if you require more information, you could table the application as well. The recommendation from administration is to approve the development permit application. Although there are many numerous variances, they all are fairly small, and I don't believe that these variances would significantly impact a neighbor. So that's why I'm recommending approval. And so this is the list of conditions outlined in the Schedule A. So this is the 9 variances that would be required. I'm not going to run through them again because I just brought them all up in the presentation. I have listed, I think it's up to 10 standard conditions. These are typical conditions for any type of fourplex development, primarily to do with engineering and construction in accordance with the building code and upon occupancy. The specific conditions that I've listed are one in particular that's for this site is for the trees that would need to be removed for confirmation that they are town assets and to work with the Parks Department. And issuance of or submission of a construction management plan, and also to do with the Built Green certification that they would be required to provide evidence that this certification, typically at occupancy, we don't have this certification yet because it takes a while for it to go through the whole approval process, but that they would provide that certification following occupancy about 90 days after is typical. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll work our way through, starting on my left with Darlene, if you've got any questions, comments.
Sure. One question I have is, can you provide clarification on the parking requirements? Is it 2 required per unit?
No, it's actually less. So in the land use bylaw, because it is a fourplex, so it fits into the multifamily, it's based on the number of bedrooms.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I know that, I don't know where the land use bylaw update process is so far, but is the intention in the new land use bylaw to retain the mirrored look regulation?
So we are updating our land use bylaw, but there is a separate process, actually, and Nathan is here. He's the lead on that project. So administration with the TP Town Task Force are looking at reviewing both the area structure plan as well as the land use districts. I believe that Nathan is in the stage where he'll be going out to the public in October with the proposed regulations. So that is happening, but it's still at the public consultation phase.
I see. Okay. As part of the public consultation phase, has that been under discussion, the aesthetic of the?
All of it's under review.
Okay. And there's no indication as to whether or not those regulations will be?
At this point, no.
Okay.
But
I see.
at the October 3rd open house, we would present that,
Thank
what
you.
changes we've made.
Sounds good. And then last question, is the intention of the land use bylaw regulation of 2 meters to 5 meter setback for the front, is the intention so that there isn't a front driveway?
The intention, from my understanding, when you read the area redevelopment plan, is to create more of a street front presence by allowing the buildings to be closer and then to allow for larger rear yards. I think the intent of the RP wasn't to have kind of the 4 units with kind of in the South Canmore, but to give more of a yard space in the back that was more of a kind of a common area.
I see.
So bringing the building up for more forward. As well, there is a provision in the land use bylaw that does allow the owners to kind of take over the landscaping because the road is narrow compared to the road right-of-way. Mm-hmm. So their landscaping can kind of continue on beyond. But it's really, I think, meant to address that street frontage.
Sorry, last question. For the new developments along that area, is it typical for them to have the driveways to the front?
I think that's becoming more common now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darlene. I'll swing it over to Eric.
Did you receive any feedback from the owner of the White House next door?
No, there was none. The notice was posted on the site for the minimum of 10 days, and there was no comment from the neighbor.
Okay.
Barney.
So I have a couple of questions. In the off-site water that's going to come off of this building that's been raised, I saw that there's a lot of provisions for that they're going to manage this, but just speaking from experience from the home that I built here, and it ended up way out of the ground. Am I not close enough? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The home that I built, and I ended up out of the ground quite significantly compared to my neighbors. There's a lot of effort has to go into this. Is there any way that this is going to be assured so the person in the White House doesn't get flooded out by the water that runs off of the big house next door?
In the engineered drawings, they did show a swale being required on site. Yeah, so I'm not an engineer, but the engineering department has been working with the applicant and with their consultant to try to ensure that that swale does manage the stormwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a second thing that's kind of off topic maybe, but the roof pitches that we've got with the 612, doesn't really accommodate future use for putting solar panels and things like that on these roofs. So is that going to be one of the things that also gets addressed in the open house in October regarding all the stipulations we have in town for very steeply pitched roofs?
So there are the two processes happening, the land use
Okay.
bylaw review in general. I do not believe that that is part of the general land use bylaw, which has come for first reading. And Nathan, do you want to speak if that's part of the TP Town discussions?
No, I think that's a larger.
It's another thing for another day. Okay.
Thanks, Carney. Over to Florian.
I just had a question. Reading the land use bylaw, I wasn't really clear if the general Canmore architectural guidelines apply to this district, or if it's the architectural guidelines in the ARP that apply.
It's the architectural guidelines in the ARP.
Okay, so not the general, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Florian. Jeff?
Thank you. For the balcony encroachment into the side yard, is that just the Juliet balconies, which
That's-
are essentially guardrails?
That's correct, yeah. I think they're only, like the balcony itself is only a 0.2, so I think it really is more of an architectural design feature than a true
Balcony, yeah.
balcony, yes.
That's just what it looked like on the plans. It just doesn't, it just looks like the guardrail balcony thing, so
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that's what it was, so that's it for me.
That's it. So I've got just a couple questions here on, which page is it? Within the discussion section of the staff report, down at the bottom, there's a comment in here. There are numerous variances and suggest the building is slightly too large for the site. And in the paragraph before, it says, while the variance to the site coverage is minor, the number of variances required to fit the dwelling on the site is not supported by administration. However, the administration is recommending that we approve this. Just like to comment on the discrepancy there.
The number of variances, I think that it is a bit too big for the site. There are too many variances, and I can describe this kind of as like, I don't really support not following the rules to this extent. It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. But in the end, do I feel like these 1,000 cuts require in refusal of the application? Possibly not. But yes, there are a significant amount of variances. It's also hard given that the regulations are under review right now, and there have been so many approvals granted specifically by the CPC for variances in the TP Town district.
Okay, and the next one is under the next following page.
Oh, sorry, and I can also add to that, in my first option as well, it is up to the CPC. If you feel that you do like the development, you could also put a condition in which does not approve certain variances. So for example, the height variances, they'd have to lower the building by 0.1 meters. If you choose that the side yard setback for the balconies, you could pick any of those variances and request that the developer redesign so that to reduce those number of variances.
Okay, then on the next item, building design, the last line on that page says the applicants provided a massing diagram of drawing A10 to support the position that the modern design is highly requested from the market. Trying to make the connection between the drawing and what the market actually requests or is requesting.
Sorry, can you point to where this is in the report?
Sure.
The modern mine side look.
Yeah, go to building, C, building design.
Yep.
In their staff report, with the last line on that page.
So in their written response to us, because we give a kind of review, it was an incomplete application. Their response back to me was that they provided this additional drawing, and they have stated that it's their position that this modern design is highly desirable. That's not my position, but they provided that drawing and their position that this is what the market is desiring.
Okay, fair enough. That's all the questions I have at this time. Do we need to
We should
go?
call the gallery and see if they have any meeting.
Sure, okay. Yeah, so we have an option of requesting the developer, providing the developer with 5 minutes of time to sort of walk through, the proponent to walk through their development. Does the proponent wish to avail themselves of that opportunity? Did you?
I'm a part owner. I'm Kerrigan Mechanical. I've been in Canmore for many years, 30 years to start with. And my partner, he owns the property. We're going together on it. And he's Jean-François, chez François. And the house right now, he's got it as staff accom, but it's deteriorating. So we're doing a fourplex. So it's more for affordable housing. Plus we got the option of staff accom. So it's beneficial for our people that work for us that been here. And also we're using all the local trades. So everybody locally, it gives them work. And right now I've talked to quite a few and they're pretty desperate for work. So they're looking forward to it, let's put it this way. It's just we got to get the ball rolling on it and before winter. And that.
Right.
And yeah, so we're doing everything the best we can, just like my business, just like chez François. He does the best of the best. If you ever go there, if you ever call us for plumbing, we try to do it the best or we don't do it. And this place here, we're doing the same thing. Is we're really wanting to design it, build it, so it is profitable for everybody. And yeah, other than that, I don't know what else to say. I guess that's about it.
So the summary is we're going towards 12 bedrooms within the four units
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
available.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that's what makes it accommodating for anybody. Is you got the bedrooms, you got the bathrooms. Me being a plumber, we're getting extra bathrooms in. Everybody likes that part of
Okay.
it. So it's well designed, let's put it this way. You know, we're using every inch to its capability. There's no wasted space in these places, you know. Okay?
Okay,
So
thank you.
anything else? No?
Oh, sorry.
I have a question. You said the market wants this, so are any of these units pre-sold?
No, no, they're not pre-sold.
Okay.
No.
So how do you determine that the market wants it? How do you determine that the market wants this type of building?
Like I said, I've been in this business for 30 years in Canmore. And Jean-François owns that property. We went into partnership. It's a win-win for both of us. You know, I mean, it's better than leaving that old house there, sitting there, deteriorating. And yeah, there's all those options. And, you know, I mean, I've done it before. I've built my own house here on Rundle Drive, which worked out great. And I think it's better than to leave it sit the way it is. Looking forward, it's the way to go, you know, I think.
Any
Anything
other
else?
questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are we prepared to make a decision on this, or do we need to go in camera for further discussion? Okay, fair enough. Could I have a motion to take the meeting in camera?
I make that motion.
Barney, thank you. All those in favor? Okay. At this point in time, we're going to meet in private, so Okay, could I have a motion to approve this development as presented? Eric, all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, Florian, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, development permit 2019-298. Darlene, are you?
Yeah, so due to a pecuniary interest, I'm going to be recusing myself for this item, and I'll be back for the third item.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. Nathan, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Canmore Planning Commission. I just wanted to begin my presentation by recalling the decision made by the Commission at the June 26 meeting. You may recall the Commission voted to table the application pending submission of revised plans that meet the parking requirements outlined in the land use bylaw, or provide mitigation to address the shortfall in parking, or justification of the variance to the satisfaction of the CPC. So my presentation today will focus on the changes made by the applicant to respond to the direction provided by the committee. The applicant has chosen to fully comply with the parking requirements of the land use bylaw.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt just for 1 second? Nathan, just before you make your presentation, can you just go kind of right to the nuts of the matter? Does the development now comply for parking requirements?
Yes, it does.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Do I need to continue on my presentation, or is the Commission happy with?
I don't think so.
Okay.
You've outlined here. Given,
Just one question. So like basically nothing else, like building design, like they've reorganized some spaces, but the layout of the building all stays the same. It's just the parking that's changed. Like
Yeah,
physically nothing else is, like the roof line stays the same, everything stays the same, just parking changes? Or is there any changes to the actual structure of the building?
So essentially, they accomplished complying with the land use bylaw in 2 ways. One, by increasing the amount of on-site parking. They did so by taking 3 landscaped islands in the parking lot and converting those to parking stalls. Those weren't required by the bylaw, so there's no implications of that change. They also took one of the loading stalls that we didn't count because it was the size of a parking stall anyways in the southeast portion of the parking lot. So there's no implications of that change. They changed it to a parking stall. So essentially that created 4 parking stalls, and then they reduced some of the unit sizes in the building and also changed a couple of uses to other uses that have lower parking requirements. The outcome in terms of some of the implications of those changes, they've added some employee housing units in Building 1 in the northwest corner, the corner closest to the lumber yard. That necessitated some exterior changes to the building, going from office to employee housing. But aside from that,
No main big like
No,
roof line
it's-
change or anything, it's just interior changes essentially.
yeah, essentially interior changes.
Perfect.
given that the changes now, the parking now complies with the land use bylaw, I think we're prepared to vote on this. Could I have a motion to approve the development as amended? Thanks, Florian. All those in favor? Carried.
Great.
Thank you.
Can I just add a comment, actually? I'd like to offer compliments to the architectural design of this project. I think it's worth pointing out that it's an exciting looking project, and I think it's very successful in that it's using contemporary details and materials and massing, and yet it's still managed to fit into the context of the community. So I think that's really encouraging to see.
Thanks, Lauren.
Very nice.
Okay, thank you. Prepared to move on to the next development permit, 2019-028, 1730 Bow Valley Trail.
Do we
Just give us a
no worries.
second for
I'll
Darlene.
just take a
to-
minute here to set up anyways. There we go.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. But she's gone. Might take longer. Yeah. You can. Just if we start, she won't be able to jump in. It's up to you guys. Take two. Sure. Okay, I don't think I'll be getting the same pass as Nathan did, but that's okay. It's the last one, so I'll walk you through this one. So thank you for coming out today. The application for you now is for a Best Western Hotel development located at 1730 on Bow Valley Trail. Development permit number DP2019-021. I really just want to give you guys a sense of the context in relation to what's surrounding the site and also to the constraints that are actually on the site prior to even getting into the discussion of what the application is for, because it is quite a unique site. So as you can see here in blue, here's our site for the Best Western. Across the street, located here, is Craig's Way Station. And when I'm referencing the site, because the north and south configuration of the lot is kind of weird, I'm just going to be referencing anything across Bow Valley Trail. A couple will be north, anything towards the site, a couple will be south, and then east and west, obvious, and the obvious directions there. So across the street, we have Craig's Way Station. Then we have Wendy's to the west of that. Then to the west of Wendy's, we have the Esso. To the east of the site, there is an existing RV campground. And then finally to the south, on the other side of the CP rail line, we have the Canmore Rec Center and the Golf and Curling Club.
So let's take a quick look from the street view what this sort of looks like. So here's a view looking from the site, looking across to like the Craig's Way station, and that's the access point that they will align with. And looking from across the street now towards the site, as you can see, it's heavily vegetated. There is a dense tree stand all throughout the site. Looking to the east towards the Wendy's and Tim Hortons, you can see here there is the Legacy Trail, which exists along the frontage. And then looking looking to the west, I should say west, not south, sorry. You can see Legacy Trail again, and you can see the dense tree stands and how far that actually goes into the site. So I really want you to keep that in mind as we go through these slides. When we're looking at the site, it is a large site. It is sort of an odd configuration of a site. It's not your standard rectangular square. It is sort of this tapered, triangular, almost like a pointed site. With the proposal, it's actually not proposing to develop the entire site. It's only proposing to develop a portion of it. As you can see here, everything shown in green is the area which will be left as is. Everything to the right is what you're seeing to be the proposed development. So let's get into some of the constraints that we have on site. So as I said, it's only going to be developing the eastern side of the site, but with that section of the site, there are a bit of constraints, and I'll highlight them for you here. The first are two water line right-of-ways, where we can't have any plantings, any buildings. Same for the Fortis transmission line, which are overhead lines, which are proposed to be buried. Let's go with the application here. They currently have a temporary agreement with Fortis, if it's approved, to actually bury the overhead lines. But again, you can't put any kind of deep vegetation in there, so trees can't go in, can't put any kind of structures over top, just surface covering. It's called asphalt, and low rooted vegetation like perennials and shrubs. Looking to the north of the site here, this isn't really a site constraint, but it does, limit, the impact that this development is going to have on Bow Valley Trail. So what you're seeing there in the pink color is the road right-of-way, which currently exists in front of the property. This is somewhat not common along the frontage of Bow Valley Trail. As you go further to the east, the properties tend to go right up to the road right-of-way. There's really not this large setback in front of it, and this right-of-way varies anywhere between 26 meters to 18.5 meters. So keep that in mind as we go through with regards to the impact this is going to be having along Bow Valley Trail. And then finally to the south, we have the CPR rail line, which requires a 27.5 meter setback from any residential or visitor accommodation buildings. So what are we seeing in front of us here today? We are seeing a visitor accommodation development for 103 units with one eating establishment. It's one building. It's located towards the front of the property, as close to Bow Valley Trail as we can get it. With the development, there is a range of unit types. So there's 31 single bed units, 2 one bed and den units, 56 2 bed units, and 14 2 bed plus den units. Looking at the parking layout, this is sort of what we want to see along Bow Valley Trail, is we don't want to see the parking in front of the building, where we're creating a sea of parking and interrupting the pedestrian realm and taking away from that overall streetscape. So what the applicant was encouraged to do with this process was to actually locate all of the parking to the rear of the site, tuck it away behind the building. So that's what you're seeing here in this yellow color. With that said, there's 112 stalls required through land use bylaw. They have provided 105 stalls on site. With that said, though, there is a bus parking stall, which is the equivalent of 15 vehicle stalls, which is allowed within the land use bylaw, and not specifically for any uses that are like visitor accommodation in nature, because you'll often get, the tour buses coming in with large groups, so they're able to provide the one, like the bus stall, which is the equivalent of 15, which then brings them up to 120 stalls, so therefore meeting the parking requirements of the land use bylaw. With respect to the bicycle parking, they are providing 24 bicycle stalls, 12 of which will be inside for secured use of the visitors. So if they have skis or bikes, they can go walk up to the front desk, they'll get an access code, and they can go and then keep their bikes inside or their skis overnight in a secured facility. The other 12 stalls are located right outside the main entrance, right here and over here, as you can see with my red pointer. Let's talk about the access to the site. There are two access points for vehicles as shown here in purple. This, called the access point right here that I'm circling over with my red pointer, that is across from the Wendy's and the Esso site. So that's your principal access into the site. So that's where all the vehicles are going to be coming in. There is a secondary, it's called an access over here to the right, which is for emergency vehicles only. So that's going to have a bollard with a lock key on it. So if there is a fire and it's called the primary access is blocked off, fire trucks can go in there. Second to that fire access will also serve as a multi-use pathway and a pedestrian pathway to get into the site. In addition to that pedestrian connection, as you can see here in the blue, there are enhancements which will be made along called the Legacy Trail to expand that. There's also a pedestrian connection from the principal access point, which leads into the site, and eventually will wrap you around to the main entrance of the building. And there's one more pedestrian access that should be noted here, and this one is located here in the southeast corner of the site. This will not actually be constructed with this development, because this is something that the engineering department's working on with CP Rail. What they're looking to achieve there is a future crossing over the rail line. So what we're doing with the development here is reserving the right-of-way to actually make that happen. And then once they reach an agreement to actually facilitate the crossing, then engineering will go in with their own funds and construct the extension there. That said, that will need a public access agreement, so that is one of the conditions that you guys will be looking for in the Schedule A. Another thing with the access agreements and maintenance, there is also going to be a maintenance agreement that will be required for the access point that runs through the road right-of-way and also for the emergency access. The reason why we need that in place is just to ensure the maintenance of it and the life cycling. And we also want to make sure that those are always clear during the winter times, especially with the emergency access, because often those things get forgotten. So we just want to make sure that there is a maintenance access or a maintenance agreement in place to kind of facilitate it's called the life cycling and the maintenance of those areas. Sustainability screening report. If you look at the score, it is in the negatives, negative 1.84. Yeah, sure, go for it.
Thank you. Is a negative 1.85 significant negative, or is it sort of a neutral?
Right, so I would say in this instance it's sort of neutral. It's called the SSR is a good tool to assess development. Is it the perfect tool? No. Where we see things that aren't accounted for instance, are like the applicants committed to meeting the enhanced green building requirements of the town. That's not something that's factored in to the SSR, because that really when you're looking at the SSR from a built green perspective, what it's really focusing on are those certification programs, so LEED and Built Green, whereas this is achieving something similar, but it's just not making note of it. The other thing as well, which called the applicants shown to do, is 20 electric vehicle charging stations, which is pretty innovative. We haven't seen lots of that around town, but that's sort of the upswing in the direction of vehicles that are coming in the future. So these guys are actually just gearing up for that, so kudos to them. And there are a few other things which they have shown and which are fairly weighted in terms of the SSR, but we couldn't actually award them points for. So for instance, they are going to have employee housing. Unfortunately, that's not going to be in Canmore. It's in Cochrane, so we couldn't actually award them points for that. How they get to and from, the details I would leave to the applicant to discuss with you, but there are certain areas where, it's called like the employee housing, if it's not provided, which isn't a requirement of the DP, the weighting goes down a fair bit. But if you provide employee housing, you would probably see that score shoot into the positives, almost into like the double digits. So that said too, there is a future phase for this. There's no commitment from the applicant to develop the remainder of the site, but they have shown us some conceptuals, which, like how much actually show some on-site housing. So things that we can't consider now, but should be noted.
So I think for context, I pay attention to the SSR, and the first development that we looked at here was plus 2.51. The iPlace development was 47, and in this minus 1.84, so relatively neutral compared to what the iPlace development has.
A score of 44 is something that we don't rarely see.
Yeah.
So that's sort of going like above and beyond. So just again, there's a score, negative 1.84. With respect to land use bylaw, there are 3 variances on which are being sought. The first is related to the minimum floor area ratio. Second is 0 lot front setback. And 3 is for the building height. Let's talk about the FAR quickly here. Section 3.6.4.3 of land use bylaw requires an FAR of 0.75. What's being proposed on site is 0.518. Keep in mind that when we're looking at the site, it has to actually take into account the full parcel. Even though that the west side is not being developed, we're looking at one large parcel, not 2 subdivided lots. So that said, the variance being requested is to 0.23 of the FER requirements. I'm just going to frame this for you a little bit clearer so you can see what I'm talking about. But if you look at this image here, so that whole site to the west of what's actually being developed is going to remain, untouched. Unfortunately, when you run the calculations for that entire site, that then brings the FAR into a deficiency. But if you were to just focus on that section in blue, the FAR for that would come in around 0.99, so well above the minimum. So for that reason there, we have zero objections to actually granting this variance because it is technically in compliance when you're looking at it from the area which is actually being developed, and with the intent and the understanding that that other side of the site could potentially be developed, which would then put it up over the minimum again. So here, when planning administration has no concerns with the shortfall in the FER. The second variance being requested is 0 lot front setback. So as per section 3.6.4.6 of the LUB, it states that there must be a 0 lot setback when fronting onto Bow Valley Trail. This is something that we keep seeing over and over again for these, developments along Bow Valley Trail, and it's proving to be an issue because it's not a realistic condition or an expectation. You get a building up to the property line, that essentially means you're just getting a flat wall. You're not going to get any sort of articulation. You're not going to get any sort of eaves over top projecting over the facade. You're going to get a blank wall. The intent with this, though, is to activate, the streetscape. What you want to have is a building up front, with the windows to show the activation of the units. Like you want to have landscaping and public spaces and amenities. What the developer has shown here is achieving that, but in a different way, because the way that they've shown the building with the articulation of patio space out front puts the building at 1.3 meters from the property line. I'm going to walk you through again. what that kind of looks like. But that said, though, there is a threshold for the variance powers of administration and of CPC, which allows for 20%. What they're looking for is 130% variance there. That said, though, because the applicant has indicated that they will be doing the enhanced green building requirements as per the town requirements, it opens up the option, as written here, it says variances in excess of the limits and described in subsection 1.17.1.1 shall be only considered and may only be granted to the development authority where the development authority is satisfied that the proposed development provides an extraordinary net benefit to the community pursuant to one or more of the following. And if you look at those three that are listed there, the last one is enhanced green construction. So the applicant has committed to actually construct to the enhanced green requirements of the town. There's a letter of engagement in your report, I believe attachment 3, which specifies exactly that. So with that said, we can look at the variance to be granted.
Sorry, I have a question about that, because in the report, I think it indicated that they would build to National Energy Code for Buildings 2017.
Yeah.
That was adopted by the province in April and is being enforced. MD of Bighorn is currently enforcing it. City of Calgary is enforcing it on building permits submitted by October 1st. So it's sort of, I don't think it's a significant, what's the wording, extraordinary net benefit. It's actually a minimum standard that's being enforced in most municipalities. I think Canmore is planning on enforcing it by December of this year.
Right.
So I just want to clarify, there's a tendency for everyone to kind of portray themselves as being green, and I think we have to be very critical and sort of analyze those claims. And I think in this case, building to NECB 2017 is more of a minimum standard rather than an extraordinary net benefit.
Couldn't agree more. But if we're working in the realm of land use bylaw and the way that section has been written, it says that if you comply with the NECB rating, that is considered enhanced green construction for the town.
But is it that minimum standard that you're going to be enforcing in December, like they would need an option not to do that?
Right, in December, correct. But we're not in December. That's the issue. So, yeah, and I'll walk you through the the variance and what we're looking to achieve with that. And it's when you look at the intent of that setback, we're achieving it, if not even exceeding it, maybe.
I agree with you that the variance is the project meets the intent of the zero setback. I'm totally satisfied with that. I just want to make the point that we need to be critical with claims about green building because everyone's doing it these days, and there's so many different systems.
Right.
So I think it's important to just be critical and precise about that. Like building to a standard that is being enforced in neighboring jurisdictions right now, to me, is not an extraordinary net benefit. And that being said, I just wanted to make that point, and I support this variance. I think the arguments that you made in the report are quite clear.
And I think it's a valid point, and that's probably something we should look at as we go through the revisions of land use bylaw to actually look at, what is extraordinary benefit. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. So just explaining here again how the development is complying with the intent of the 0 meter setback. So as you can see up here on the screen, the red line indicates the front yard setback. The building shown here to the front facade wall is 1.3 meters. What you're not seeing here in front, though, is that 18.5 meter road right of way. So even if the building were to go right up to the property line, you still have that 18.5 meter road right of way, which is completely forested and like a tree dense area. So what you're going to be seeing of the building is fairly limited. The interaction a pedestrian is going to have walking through Bow Valley Trail with this building is fairly limited. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through this rationale. So here's a good illustration of what this is going to look like along Bow Valley Trail as you go by. As you can see, a vast majority of the building is screened with the existing tree stand. That said, the tree stand will be somewhat thinned out for the purpose of fire smarting, but it's not going to remove a lot of those larger trees. It's essentially just going to clean up all the lower ground surface brush and anything that is quickly flammable. Again, another view looking west off Bow Valley Trail. The interaction with the pedestrian, enhancing the streetscape, kind of limited because of the road right-of-way setback. And another image here looking to the east. As you can see, setback in place, development fairly screened. So all that said, we're okay with the variance as proposed because it is trying to meet the intent as much as it can on site, but with, like the road right-of-way, the building articulation requirements, we realize that this 0 meter setback is an issue, and that's something that you guys will be seeing it addressed in the new land use bylaw. That will no longer be a 0 meter setback. We'll allow for some flexibility, to have like amenity spaces, unlike the building articulations, the roof cantilevers, that kind of stuff. And to the last variance required is maximum building height. As per section 3.6.4.10, maximum building height is supposed to be 16 meters. Applicant is proposing 17.02 meters, which is a 6.4% variance to the overall height. In general, we don't have a concern with this. If you look at the building facade and the articulation in the roof forms, we're getting a variety of roof forms here. We're getting that, like the cascading roof. I know we spoke about this with another application, but it's sort of achieving the variation in the desired roof design. So with that said, we're okay with the variance. And then looking at it again with the setback from the road, interaction with the streetscape and all the vegetation, it is fairly screened. So the issues around massing and those concerns essentially are eliminated. That said, CBC has 3 options here. 1, you can approve the application subject to the conditions or in addition to others in the Schedule A. Refuse the application specifying reasons why. Table the application pending submission of any additional details requested. And just to quickly summarize, a variance is required to the FAR as they're proposing 0.518, 0 lot setback. They're showing a setback of 1.3 meters. The building height variance of 1.02. And this whole development mainly complies, with the LUB, fully complies to go with the Bow Valley Trail on the area redevelopment plan, and it complies with the architectural and design standards in the LUB. As such, administration is recommending approval of the application, and I open the floor to any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Why don't we start at the right here with Eric? Do you have any questions or comments?
Sure. With regard to the landscaping, you
Yeah.
indicate that within that site, there 20% landscaping as opposed to 25% required, but it's not recorded as a variance because of the size relative to the site. Is there anything to stop them from subdividing the site and not then meeting the minimum requirements for landscaping?
Right, so if you look at the Schedule A in your package there, I believe it's attachment 2, we've put in an advisory condition, which says once you develop that site, the remainder of the site will have to come into compliance with the 25%. Can we restrict them from subdividing it off? No. We can't. We've actually tried to get them to subdivide off the get-go, just so we can have a cleaner application, because this also runs into issues with off-site levies and trying to collect twice. So there is no way to restrict them. So what we've said is in the Schedule A, we just put in this condition of an advisory which says, should you develop the remainder of the site, any landscaping would then have to be looked at on a comprehensive basis to ensure that the entire site is 25%, not 20 and then 25%. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but it troubles me in that, people like to take advantage of things. So,
No, fair.
the other part was at page 131, pedestrian-oriented streetscape. You indicated that it's unable to contribute.
Yes.
Could you just explain that a bit?
Yeah, so
better
I'll
for me?
just pull.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Could you just explain that a bit better for me? Thanks.
So I'm just going to go back to the references regarding that 0 lot front setback. So again, if you look at, like the site here, I'm going to flip to this image. This is a really cool. The image here on the bottom is a much better visual. So as you go along Bow Valley Trail and you go further towards, like the east, you get to the Super 8s, like the base camps, like the Boston Pizzas. Those sort of developments pull right to the streets. This site does not have that opportunity because there is such a large road right-of-way in front. So it's not actually contributing to the pedestrian realm and the streetscape along Bow Valley Trail just because of the road right-of-way. There were some intentions off the get-go to kind of look at a plaza space in there, but at the end of the day, the applicant did not want to pay for the longevity of the maintenance for that, and it's not really a requirement of the development that like we can enforce. It was just a discussion we were having, but at the end of the day, we're left with the road right-of-way, and that is what it is, unless the applicant wants to purchase it and then expand the development out, which they have no intent in doing.
So you're really saying from a subjective perspective, if we like it, it's okay. If we don't, it's not?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, well, it is what it is, but
It
no.
doesn't detract from the legacy trail.
Right, and no, because if you look at, like the site design, they've achieved just about everything you can do to kind of enhance the frontage of the building.
Okay. Points made.
Yeah.
No other questions?
Okay. Darlene?
Was the traffic impact assessment required for this site, given how busy and congested it gets in front of those drive-through vehicle-oriented services?
Yes. So there was, and engineering was one to look at that, and that's where the requirement for that secondary access came into play. So that was one of the requirements that had to go in place, was a secondary access. They're also looking at, when enhancements along the right-of-way. So with the expansion of the Legacy Trail, the pedestrian connections, the future crossing across like the CP rail line, those are all things that get factored into the TIA. But with the review from engineering, they're okay with where it's at the moment.
Okay, sorry I missed that.
That's okay.
I also saw in the package that I think it was part of the applicant submission, so I can ask them if you don't have the answer, but they mentioned that they were going to have a project consultation program that meets or exceeds the municipal standards. Do you know what's been done so far?
I have no information on that.
Okay,
I would leave
thanks.
that to the applicant.
And then just a third thing is more of a general comment is, I'm very pro-comprehensive planning, and when we get applications like this that's very piecemeal, it's really hard to have considered and thoughtful, or to make considered and thoughtful recommendations and decisions. Like, for example, for this site, they're developing half of it, and we're considering the FAR meets the FAR for that specific site, but then we're being asked to consider landscaping based on they're not going to be developing the other half of the site for landscaping. So just a comment that I think that it would be very helpful in future applications to be able to see the comprehensive plan, or even if conceptual in nature, and you mentioned that you had seen it on your end, it would help us to even see how is this access being used, how does the two sites work together, should they be treated as separate sites? So
there you go. My apologies. It's up on the screen. We've got the conceptual plan.
Thanks very much.
But as I was saying before, there's no commitment from the applicant to develop the adjacent lands to the west. What they've shown us, all conceptually, is another hotel located, my pointer on, located here in this building. It would be similar to what you're looking at today, and then just to the west of that, there would be another smaller building, which would be, like a staff accommodation for anybody working on site. But again, all conceptual. We can't hold them to it. It's just there for those planning purposes, like you said. Well, You know, like is this going to affect the development of the remainder of the site? And those are the things that, you know, like we've looked at, we just can't hold them to it,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Any other questions,
That's
Darlene?
everything, sorry.
Okay. Florian?
I think it's quite a clear presentation, and I think it looks like the road right-of-way is basically no problem. It looks like the road right-of-way is sort of throwing a monkey wrench into the ASP plan to build up to the street. Is that right? I think that the expanded bike lane across from the hospital further down Bow Valley Trail is very successful, and I hope that would be extended out to this part of Bow Valley Trail at some point in the future. But I mean, it's not even a question. I'm kind of making an observation. I think the presentation has been pretty clear.
Just to be clear, to focus on that same topic, there is an enhanced crossing. I'm going to make this bigger here so you can see it. This is an off-site improvement that's being discussed with engineering and the applicant. So there is going to be an enhanced crossing kind of located right over here to the northwest of the site. This here is all going to be an improved crossing, you know, with pedestrian signage, similar to what you've seen on Bow Valley Trail. It's just going to replicate that exact same model.
And is that the applicant contributing to that crossing, or is that?
Yeah, that's the applicant contributing fully.
Thank you.
Bernie?
Well, I have a strange question. With all the trees in front of this building, how is the applicant going to be able to advertise what it is so people just don't drive by and then have to turn around to come back?
Yes. So that is a discussion of signage.
Correct.
Yes, and signage is not part of this application. That's a whole nother process. So with that said, planning will have to look at it and give consideration to all the screening of the trees. There would likely need to be a sign within the road right-of-way. Not something uncommon, but it just will bring into account other implications as, you know, like maintenance, any sort of removal of the sign, long-term, that kind of stuff. But those are all the discussions that we've already had with them, and that's just a separate
So we'll have
process to
another
this.
go with this another day with the sign then?
That won't
potentially.
come here. That'll just go to administration.
We just had bad experiences with signs, that's all.
I've heard about that.
And one other thing too, just as a comment, the staff housing is going to be in another community, and that community is 45 minutes away. So there's going to be transportation provided for these people. We don't know, and if there is, then that's an opportunity for another firm to be providing a bus service between this community and this other community.
Correct, and I don't know all the details of that, and for those reasons, that's why we haven't awarded any points in the SSR, because it's outside of our community.
Okay, thank
If
you
you
very
have
much.
questions, I would direct them towards the applicant.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Gurney. Jeff?
I don't have any additional questions right now.
Okay, thanks. I just have one comment, and that relates to the traffic impact. You know, my observation on Bow Valley Trail in that vicinity, either any time earlier on in the morning or later in the afternoon when folks are returning from Banff National Park or passing through looking to access the fast food and the gasoline there, it's a recipe for disaster with people stopping at the last minute and others trying to get through. And I know that you said engineering has looked at that. Fair enough. It's my observation is that it will be a recipe for disaster at some point in time. No other comments.
Okay.
Are we prepared to act on this, I think?
So before you make a decision, I
So-
believe Mr. Fark is asking for a recess, if
Oh,
possible.
okay, fair enough. we could,
ourselves into camera.
yes,
That would be a good thing, too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Does the applicant wish to make a presentation? No? Fair enough, okay.
Very good.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to go in camera at this point in time? All those in favor? All in favor, unanimous, carried.
Yeah.
We could go on
Okay.
camera for a period of time here. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your patience, to everyone. Michael, you have some additional information to add?
Yes, so I apologize, and I apologize both to the Commission and to the applicant that this is a last-minute intervention. Administration would like the opportunity to reconsider its support for the variance for the floor area ratio. We have concerns over the implications for off-site levies for future development, and we have concerns that those implications have not been thoroughly explored. So to your earlier question about the comprehensive planning for the site, you are absolutely correct. We have a concern that the comprehensive planning for the site has not been fully considered and has implications for future off-site levies. And for that reason, we would reconsider our support, the administrative position for the support for that variance. So based on that, we would request that the Commission table the decision rather than...
Postpone?
Oh, postpone, sorry, yes, postpone the decision.
Yes. Any questions for Michael? Florian, you have one?
I guess I don't fully understand what the issue is, but if you're recommending that we postpone, then I think that's something that we would consider doing, right? And get the information later?
So, yes, so you can postpone on the basis of requiring additional information from administration. The crux of the issue is that the MGA and our current understanding of the interpretation states that you can only collect off-site levies in respect to land once. And so we have a concern over development of only half the site in a variance on the floor area ratio required, which may, and I do not know this for certain, but it may impact the town's ability to collect off-sites in respect to future development on the site.
So, sorry to interrupt you. If I understand you correctly, you're saying that if you collect off-site levies for this development and they put a second hotel on that same lot, you may not be able to collect off-site levies for that entire development.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is our concern.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
None for me.
So I think it's fair, sorry.
So,
Eric?
while pending administration's investigation into whether they're able to collect future off-site levies, I move that we postpone this matter for further consideration.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, so,
Oh, so yes, you should postpone to a specific date?
Our next is
September 25th is our next. No, we have September 25th as well.
Yeah, so postpone to September 25th, please.
our next meeting.
okay, great. Thank you. So, any other planning business that we need to cover off here? No, the next scheduled meeting is October 30th. September 25th.
We just made a change.
Yeah. Great. Okay, thank you. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Garni, all those in favor? Carried.